Evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth of the NAVA Advocacy Program workshops. We have already got, it looks like 82 people there. Sorry that we're a little bit late starting today. We have had the technical difficulties, and we're very much hoping that we're going to be resolving our technical difficulties rather soon. I can see that there are some people on the chat. Hello, everyone. Yes, good old technology, says Debbie Talon. Absolutely. I think this is very much a time where we're very much relying on technology being great everywhere. And unfortunately, that is not always the case. So we have one of our guests here, Darren Rudd. Hi, Darren.
Hello, Esther.
And the other two of our guests, John Alexander and Zoe McKenzie, are still trying to get through. And so I'm hoping that will happen very, very soon, because John Alexander, the member for Bennelong and the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group for Contemporary Arts and Culture, is our first guest today. And being on a tight schedule in a parliamentary sitting week, he has already let me know that he's actually only got 20 minutes with us. And so I'm very concerned that by the time he joins us, he may have to get going again. So, but until before that happens, thank you to everyone who has been noting on the chat where you are, where you're from. Hello. In the past, we've had sometimes some trouble with hearing us as well. But those of you who are on the public chat, how's the sound sounding this evening? I'm hoping it's sounding good. Hello, Anne from Bonadera, hearing me well. Thank you. Oh, good. Wow, a whole chorus of good. Darren, have you got the little chat interface open as well? Are you able to see people and where they're coming in from? WA, Grafton, Brisbane?
Yes. I think I have.
It's extraordinary. We've now got just over 100 people with us, and that will keep building up as we go. So I'm going to absolutely cross my fingers that JA and Zoe are joining us soon. But in the meantime, let's make the very, very most of this time that we have with Darren, because there's lots to talk about. And this is the fourth week of our weekly workshops. The NAVA Advocacy Program is all about skilling us up, developing some great advocacy skills together, not just in emergency, not just in a crisis like this, but in a great long-term way. There's some conversations in the chat there about a transcript from Elizabeth and Debbie, who's responded. Should let everyone know that, first of all, this evening is being live captioned by Helen, who is in Brisbane, which is great. Hello, Helen. And we will pop up the link to the live caption in just a sec. And then this is also being recorded and transcribed, and the recording is then made available on our website. Now, I can see that John has joined us. At least he is on the call, and soon we will have his audio and his video as well, and hoping that we will soon have Zoe joining us as well. But first of all, let me introduce Darren Rudd. Darren is a global corporate communications, resources and government affairs consultant. He's been a director of arts, cultural and bilateral companies in Australia and Asia. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Great to have you here. Where are you today?
I'm in my house in King's Cross, Sydney, looking out at the water, and got a whole pile of stuff here on my desk.
Very close to my Sydney home, also on Gadigal land in Potts Point, but I am in Melbourne, in my Melbourne home, which is my real home, here on the lands of the Bunwurrung and the Woiwurrung Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Thank you to Holly, who's just put up the link to the live captioning, which is a super handy thing when technology can be a little bit fickle, and our sound can be not so great. So, Darren, tell us a bit about, I guess, your background in the various roles that encompass government engagement. And I should say also, just by way of preface for everyone, that Darren and also Zoe, who'll be joining us shortly, is a board member of the Australia Council, but speaking in their independent capacities this evening. And having just asked Darren that question, I'm now going to segue to John, because John can only join us for a short time this evening. And while he is setting up there to be able to see us, Eleanor is saying that she can't see or hear. Is this being recorded? Eleanor, just have a check at the audio and visual. If someone can type a bit of a note to Eleanor to ask her, since she can't see or hear, to check her audio and video settings at her end, and to note that it is being transcribed. Welcome to John Alexander, the member for Bennelong, and the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group for Contemporary Arts and Culture. Thank you for persevering with the technology, and welcome.
As you can see, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Indeed, yes.
Hi, Esther. Hi, all, and welcome. As you can see, I'm of an age where I'm not likely to be very good with technology, but I persevered. I mean, it said just press the button, you can get in, but I had to provide a username, I had to provide a code and a few other things.
Oh, goodness me.
But there we go.
Me. No, I'm glad you persevered.
With other events in my life, I persevere. I'm not particularly talented.
And we have just had Zoe McKenzie join us. Zoe is a company director and trade consultant. She's a former policy advisor in arts, communications, education, and the law to Liberal Party ministers and premiers at both state and federal levels. Welcome, Zoe. And thank you also for persevering with the technology. Now, JA can only stay with us for just a few minutes this evening because he's got another meeting to get to right afterwards. And today is a session where we're reflecting on the conversations we've had so far about what is advocacy, what are some different ways of engaging with it. And JA, as the co-chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group for Contemporary Arts and Culture, tell us a bit about, first of all, what made you accept being chair of this important group, and how do you see advocacy for the arts within your party, within the coalition at the moment?
Well, there's two things that have driven me to your arms. One, I did a lot of work on a project called Australia World Stage, which was actively looking at, and it's with Simon Birmingham now again, actively looking at using performing arts and sports as drivers for high tourism and for regional tourism. So my thinking in regard to these things is that if you're representing just the arts, you will be looking at a certain level of funding. But if arts are driving tourism and making Australia into, as I said, Australia the world stage, then you're looking at a far bigger role that you will play, and therefore greater budgetary support. So there's those things that are, I think, really important positioning of arts and performers in this extraordinary heritage that we have, because we have had unbelievable actors, singers, musicians come from Australia and artists, and that I don't think we have given them an appropriate stage and an appropriate respect, and also in turn what's needed, the development programs to make sure that we produce the next generation. So I think it's very important. Then personally, I also have a son who is involved in performing arts, so that brings it home. So I've got a vested interest there that I'd like him to get work.
Always good to have that personal connection.
So
I think that's
a more recent development, but I think they're the things that I think I have worked on before I was involved with you directly, and I think that there is a lot of potential there, and we're constantly looking at, in these troubled times, what can we do on the road to recovery? And I've spoken to John Barilaro about this also, who's very
Great.
good to develop regional tourism and the regional economy, and seeing that arts and performing arts can play a vital role in that, because we don't want to endlessly be just a destination of a reef, a big rock, and endless beaches. We are far more sophisticated than that, and I think that we can develop a season for arts. There's no reason why we can't even have the arts season and performing arts season roll into a sports season, where there is a continuity of tourism opportunities, both domestically and internationally.
Well, that's right. And in fact, we do have that. Part of the challenge, of course, is the communicating of. And as you've said, there is, there are more funds available in the tourism area. Is the challenge then that within the current machinery of government or portfolio arrangements, that those internal conversations aren't happening? How do we make sure that it's understood, for example, within the tourism portfolio? Particularly, we've got a couple of questions on this from our group, from Anna Glynn, who's saying that future international tourism is looking really problematic. And so domestic tourism and domestic regional tourism is going to be absolutely essential. How do we kind of join those dots within government so that those conversations are being had for the benefit of the sector?
Well, I think a big thing is getting to know each other. And I think part of that is for an effort to be made to engage with your local members of parliament and find what they are interested in, and then seek to have that conversation locally and have them engage with what you have locally. I can remember going to the Ride Hunters Hill Symphony Orchestra and being absolutely captivated by symphony music, which I had previous experience with, where I wasn't all that taken with it. But as it was performed and live and being close, it was a fantastic experience, and that moved us to try to do some work there locally. But the group we were working with at the time was a little bit difficult. They should realise that when somebody's trying to help them, that this is how it comes, and the sponsors that we were looking at wanted certain things, and you've got to sometimes maybe compromise the way you've done things in the past to get your foot in the door of the commercial, your sponsors. But I think that's an important thing. And then when you come to Canberra, you've got several friendships, but I think there's a huge advantage you have in that when you present here, that you can bring something that's exciting for people to watch, see, listen to, and then meet the actual performers or the artists. And I think that's a very important thing. And then to have a clarity of what you're actually wanting to ask. And what I've learned in negotiations is that you start with something that's very doable, and you alone know where you want to go to the next stage. So once you get the first little commitment, we'll call it holding hands, and then you move to the next little part of the relationship, and then pretty soon you've got a marriage and you've got children on the way. So there's the idea of just building those little relationships one step at a time, making them solid, but having a plan of where you want to go to, and not be in a hurry, not come and say, well, this is what I want. I want the marriage, 4 children, and the house on the hill. It's what do we get first? What's the first thing? What's the second thing? And move it along and stay engaged to find out, well, what can be given to you from these mysterious people who call themselves politicians.
Now, there's a question from Matt Seary who's just saying, just to clarify about the advice you've just given, John, around building those relationships with local members. Your advice isn't about asking them necessarily the kinds of art that they'd like to see made, but rather understanding where they're coming from and what their interests are before pitching to them.
Yes. Hook them in with the bait that they want to take, and get that personal relationship built on a common interest that you can share, and that I mean, it's a fantastic thing for a working politician. You go to a lot of events, but to go to an event that's truly entertaining and really moving, and the very product that you're trying to sell, expose that product to them, get them to buy into it, and then how can you help, and all the underlying reasons why you can help. Because when we were looking at music, we were wanting our musicians within the Ride Hunters Hill Symphony Orchestra, one, that they would be receiving funding from companies, and at times not the entire orchestra would be required for a company function, but some of the players might be, 3 or 4 or 5 of the players. There would also be other opportunities for those members of the orchestra to go into schools and to assist with the development of their bands and orchestras in schools and their music program, but being paid by the sponsors. And I thought it was a great sort of plan of having more performing arts, more entertainment, and also building with the players of today, more players of tomorrow, and actually having a.
Oh, now John has just frozen for me. Darren, can you still see John?
John has frozen for me too.
Oh dear. John, I'm not sure whether you can still hear us, but we can't still hear you. My next, yes, everyone's saying that he's frozen as well. My next question for John was going to be to ask him about when he's speaking to his colleagues on the coalition side about the arts, what the sort of what are the insider tips and tricks for the way in which to position the arts in ways that perhaps we're not accustomed to. I'm not sure whether we are going to get John back. He did also say that he didn't have much time, and I heard both division bells ring at one point as well, and so I'm not sure what has happened. So he's frozen a very thoughtful kind of mid-sentence. Let's look at some of the questions that have come in from the chat and see if Darren and I would like to tackle those, and then we might we'll see if John comes back, or we'll move on to the next part of our discussion. Now, as you know, as part of the NAVA Advocacy Program, we're in 4 different we have 4 different parts to our program. We're going to have a whole 4 weeks on political engagement, looking at things like getting to know, an MP or a local member, starting with, what was their first speech? What are the values and principles? Why did they join Parliament? What do they want to achieve? Using the Australia Council's Electoral Profiles tool, which is absolutely brilliant. A question from Sarah Miller on the frustrations of forming relationships with MPs is that, of course, you can form a really great relationship with an MP, but then unfortunately that member can lose their seat, or there's a change of government and then you have to start all over again. This lack of continuity has been an ongoing issue. Do we need a more bipartisan approach? Darren, how would you respond to that great reality of political life?
Yeah. Actually, I took notice, Sarah's question. It's a very valid question. A couple of really quick ones. I feel over-engagement, to John's point, is absolutely critical. Don't be afraid of engaging. Absolutely engage with politicians of all persuasions and or colours. Engage at a federal level, a state level, and also a local level, because they all influence each other. So I think that gets around the problem. You've just got to, and you don't do it every day. My other insight would be, where possible, don't actually go to Canberra. engage with an MP or a senator in his or her electorate. You get more time. It's less costly. You might have to, and if you can't get access immediately to that MP or that senator over time to, glean what it is that interests them in the context of art, get to know either their staff in their electoral office or their advisors that move between the electoral office and Canberra. So there are a number of ways to get to understand your MP. And again, I'd encourage you to engage, to Sarah's question, to all sides of politics. You're going to find that some of the more senior cabinet ministers, for example, it might be a bit tricky to go to Perth and see one of them, or go down up to Brisbane or whatever. That may require a concentrated, planned cohort going to Canberra. But don't be afraid to over-engage, get to know these people. This is a longer-term investment strategy. It's not something you're going to do overnight. You've got to develop. I think John's back now. I'll hand over to John.
Except that we can't hear John. He's just...
Hello, is that better?
Hello, that is, yes.
Yeah, mastered technology again. What I found out was when somebody phones you, it takes you off this. And that was my daughter. And so I played, can't talk to you, go away, talk to you later. And somehow I was lost, but I'm back. Yes, I think what you were just saying there, Darren, is correct. What you need is a couple of champions, people who are enthusiastic. Don't try to win everyone. Find out those who can form a group, a friendship group here, either formally or informally, who are going to, when you do come to Canberra, that we can make sure that through personal invitation, we get a number of our colleagues coming to support. But you've got to have a purpose. What do you want? And it's got to be doable. So I think it's a good time to be planning now, because what can be done regionally to drive tourism now and to stimulate regional tourism, because that's a really key thing. And then if you think the other aspect, because we're talking about a lot about mental health, there's a huge concern that mental health issues may sadly take more lives than the COVID virus. And so if you think there's virtually nothing you can do better for your mental health than be entertained in any number of ways. It's a distraction. It can be uplifting, inspiring. And I think that's a very important thing. And not just it can be the watching. It also can be the participation. So again, the players can be coaches and get people involved, especially in that intimacy of a regional area, and actually hold classes while they're actually in the time that they might be there doing performances. And
J.A., I think that's absolutely vital, bring the two conversations together about building those connections, knowing who the champions are, but also, it take us today, for example, here today, there's 125 of us. We're in some countries around the world, but most of us are here in Australia. If every one of us was maintaining a really great relationship with our local member, meeting in their electorate, as Darren was saying, introducing yourself, I'm an artist, this is how I work, and building that relationship, inviting your local MP to your studio, to the gallery, because part of the John, I remember you saying to me last year and many times over the years that you're just not seeing enough arts people in your office, and certainly your colleagues are not getting those meeting requests.
Yeah, and I think, and you're right. And the other great asset that you have, we have great artists who, politicians are like stargazers, like everybody else. They are. If you could get Jimmy Barnes, just a person, to come to a politician's office or prime minister's office, you can be sure they would move the mountains, they would separate the waters, and they'd do whatever they could to be in their company. And it should be bipartisan. This is not, one side shouldn't own it. In fact, if you could create some healthy competitive tension where they were competing for the favours of great artists, you might find that much more would be done. But it's also a part of maybe getting those people to understand what role you're really trying to do. And look, they have done all sorts of great things in recent times with the bushfires and now COVID virus, and how they can do things from their home with modern technology. They're always ringing me up for advice on technology, knowing what a master I am.
Now,
that was humour.
J.A., we've got a question from Lisa Paulson, who says, we're very aware of, your record as a sports hero, obviously, and that you've got great colleagues there who are also passionate for sport as well. Can you name a few other colleague politicians who also strongly identify with an interest in the arts?
That's a good question, because the first bland answer is every single one of them would have a specific interest, and they'd be hugely varied. But I know a lot of them are madly keen on rock music, and when we've had events like that, there's a mad rush. I'm just trying to think. There's the member for Kevin Rudd's old seat. She's pretty active in this area. Her name
Terry Butler?
Yes, Terry Butler.
Terry Butler?
I think she would be a really, really good one. Even my friend Mike Michael Highlander, member for what is it? But anyway, Mike.
Member for Somewhere Great.
Yeah. You find that he'd be a bit of a sleeper too, and would have something in particular. But I guess the idea would be to find out and categorize some of these people. Maybe a little questionnaire. In fact, that's such a good idea. I'll write it down.
Write it down, J.A.
A little questionnaire asking what the artistic interest is from rock and roll, and circulate that and get them engaged in that way by responding. Because there was a study made once when I was involved in the development of sports clubs, and it was, what do people like to hear from most if the phone rings? And like, the worst thing was your accountant, your doctor or something, and one of the top things was your sports club calling you up to say, hey, John, we haven't seen you on the first tee for a while. When are you coming to play golf again? Or when are you coming to the gym again? Or whatever. And you want to hear that, you want to react. But I'm sure that performing arts and arts would be in that category. If someone's going to get a question about, well, it's a lovely distraction. What sort of music do you like? What sort of art do you like? What sort of theatre do you like? What have been your favourite shows? I think people would willingly do that. And then you've got intelligence that you can use for they don't know what you're getting at.
Well, that would be amazing. In fact, we should work on something together in your capacity as co-chair of the Parliamentary Friends. We should definitely get a questionnaire out there. One of the challenges we have in the visual arts is that, unlike in the performing arts or rock and roll, those artists who are performers are often, they have that profile because in performing, in getting themselves out there, they become recognised. But of course, in visual arts, it's the work which speaks for itself. And often people outside of the arts can't always name or picture a visual artist, even though they might be able to, that they might absolutely love their work. Is that a challenge for us, do you think, in terms of, politicians, okay, if they're going to be responding a lot to high-profile artists, what about those times when we'd love to invite an artist to a meeting that a politician might not have heard of them?
I'll give you an example. Years ago, I was asked to be the patron or whatever of the South Australian Women's Open Tennis Tournament at the Barossa Valley at a place called Nuriutpa, which I had never heard of. And I went there, and it was fantastic. And so what we did we then decided we would have an event, a pro-am event. That is, 3 people would sign up to play in a tennis tournament with one of the pros. And it was called Play with a Star. And this whole idea was that Steffi Graf 5 years before had actually played in this event. And now she's won Wimbledon 2 or 3 times. And had you signed up, you would have been playing with Steffi back then. And now that she's winning Wimbledon, you could be saying, good luck at Wimbledon sort of thing. And so this was Playing with a Star. We made more money and got more people coming to the event on the Tuesdays and Wednesday nights when we had this pro-am thing than ever before. Now you can do exactly the same thing with performing arts and arts when you've got that contact where you're actually with the artist and you say, no, this person isn't famous. Because I saw one of the little quips, so now we've got to change our name to Kylie and Jimmy. No, that was a cheap shot. I'm just here trying to help. If I want to get abuse, I'll go home and talk to my children. Thank you very much. So, I think the idea is that when you get that intimacy of, who gets to meet an artist, who actually paints, to actually, for me to go into, I've been into an artist studio maybe once for sure, and maybe a couple of times I had a family member, an artist, and we saw her at work. But it's a fascinating thing to actually go into somebody's studio and do something you couldn't even dream of.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you people in those areas take it all for granted. People who can't do it, or somebody who can even play a guitar. I mean, that's beyond my wildest dream. But to then having put that on and just say, I'll just do this, and actually make a noise that doesn't sound revolting, that's a once in a lifetime experience. And I think there's so many things that I think you don't always, prophet has no honor in his own country. You don't always appreciate people who have a level of expertise in something. Is what others who can't do that but admire. I might love the Beatles, but anybody who can even hum a tune, I think is fantastic. Anyone who can play guitar is fantastic, can play the drums is fantastic. To actually meet someone who plays the drums professionally or to entertain people is fantastic. To then say, hey, John, take this and beat on this, it would be a great experience. But I think all of those things you can weave into your engagement and have that strategic advantage over someone who's trying to sell us a drug that's going to fix some really rare disease. As worthy as that is and as fantastic as that is, you've got a real advantage. And I think if you understand your advantage and understand how you can better use that to get involved. But the development of a plan. I've made a note. I took something to Louise Heron years ago, which was about creating the equivalent to, I think it's called a Biennale festival, but it was having a season of performing arts and of opera and of ballet and of stage that then led into I think from my memory, there is kind of a high season around about September, October or something. But to me, it then led into the racing season, and I thought that was really complementary. But it went right into the detail of doing regional orchestras and stuff like that, and getting local companies to sponsor such things and to take it into schools. So, I just couldn't get support at that time, but it's back in front of Simon. So I'll find that and get that to you as well. And Louise Heron, who's got a very important position with the Opera House, she was really engaged with this. She thought it was a very good plan, and like a lot of plans that I develop, I start off with a little bit of an idea, or I meet with someone, I steal their idea, and you take it to somebody else, and it sort of builds into something. And we built it into something that I thought was quite doable. But if I can't get it up locally because of an incapacity to do a deal, there's a problem that we've got to find out how we work together.
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of the frustration, certainly in the arts, and I'm just seeing some of the questions in the field there as well, is that, and there's one there from Nicole van Bruggen saying we are talking about some specific case studies and situations here, and of course a lot of us are in ongoing conversations with MPs, but also those kinds of seasons, whether they're around festivals, whether they're leading into the spring season, connections to sporting events. But part of our frustration in the arts is that there is so much that is already going on. It's really, really difficult for us to communicate that to decision makers and to communicate, as Nicole puts it, how do we lobby more successfully as a sector, so the current federal government is encouraged to acknowledge the contribution that the arts make to society as a whole and the contribution that the arts makes to GDP. We do see successful lobbying from other sectors such as sport. How would you recommend on that broader kind of national industry level? Where are we falling short there?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, often obscene how much money gets spent on sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, I've expressed my concerns because sports can often be commercially viable. That used to be my business. But there's an interesting definition of team. And the definition of team is a group of individuals who come together to achieve a common purpose. And hopefully they have complementary skills and are more than their sum total of parts. But if you thought of yourself as the world of performing arts and art as team, and that you were united in effort, and that they're not people breaking away and refusing to take the flu injection, for instance, it might.
I don't think we have many anti-vaxxers in the arts.
No, that's what's bringing rugby to its knees at the moment.
Oh, it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It's so irresponsible.
And to be able to speak, have one voice representing you all, and knowing that within your team you'll get it sorted out and make sure that everybody is treated fairly, and that it's this wonderful world of performing arts and arts, and to call it a team might not be the worst thing, because then you've got that association with sports, which and to use a cross promotion, because nearly all athletes seem to be crazy on some form of music or whatever. I know as a younger person, which I was just yesterday, I'm much older today, like you. There's another third party endorser that you can get, and they're celebrities, and whether you can find associations there that help carry your banner. But I think there's so many things that can be explored. But I think from this, if you get one outcome out of a meeting, good. So one outcome is that we should develop a questionnaire to go to all parliamentarians.
Let's do the questionnaire.
We make it very attractive. Maybe even showing I'll say Johnny O'Keefe instead of Jimmy Barnes. So because I did a thing on Facebook the other day regarding Johnny O'Keefe, who I saw once and I thought was just, when he walked on stage, I thought he was 4 feet off the stage. He had unbelievable charisma for this kid. But at some point, he must have been a young, aspiring artist and must have had people around, and people must have seen him at some local pub or somewhere, surf club or whatever. And then, he becomes this fabulous star. I think that's what we're wanting to purvey. So I think if we can push that questionnaire and get buy-in, and then also I'll find Louise Heron's, the thing that I sent to Louise Heron, to see if we can't rebirth that and get a champion like Louise to champion our efforts too. Because if you think of the Opera House as being our Wimbledon or our centre court, we've got a lot of field courts where the game is played. To bring it back to my sport of tennis, there's a lot of or off Broadway that artists must work on their game to get to their main stage, or their fulfill their potential. So I think that's to sort of develop some better structure might be really helpful. And I'm still a believer, although I've not got anyone to agree with me, that the chance to give people the opportunity to buy into young artists and take a share, like you incorporate an artist. I would much rather do that than bet on a racehorse, because I've got an interest and I know I'm actually helping that young person. It would be tax deductible, and if they're wildly successful, oh good, I get my money back, fantastic, and then let it ride on the next horse. But I could have an interest every time that young person is performing at a stage show or something, because I've got a share. Maybe I get a discount on the ticket or something like that. But I'd also seek to bring along my friends and show them how smart I am. See, that person playing this role, I'm one of the shareholders there. I just think it'd be something that Australians would easily understand, because in horse racing, lots of people, Maurice Payne, for instance, owns part of a horse, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, who's working very hard these days. And I'm sure she would have, a very sophisticated lady, I'm sure she'd have some very interesting artistic taste, or maybe you'll even find out that she likes punk rock. For instance, Minister Lee, Susan Lee, was a punk rocker in her teens, for instance.
Intriguing. We'll have to add that to the questionnaire. Now, J.A., I'm just going to look at my watch, because you had let me know that there was a meeting you need to get to. How are we doing for time?
No, I didn't tell you, but I got Jonathan to say that I might be late and might not even make it. And, I'm far more interested in this than what Jonathan thought I should be doing. Sorry, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan. In that case, let us bring Darren and... In that case, let us bring Darren and Zoe in, because we have got so many questions that people are bringing, and there are a couple of more directly party political questions for you, J.A. And one of them, which comes from, I'm just scrolling back up to find it, Louise Rollman. We've just lost J.A. It would have been great to ask those very specific questions about, yes, how would JA encourage an art lover to vote for the coalition? Because it's, when we speak directly to politicians who aren't the arts minister, people have all sorts of, very different ways of talking about the arts. I'm seeing in the chat there's some interest, but there's also some frustration from people in the range of things that JA was talking about. But Darren, does he seem fairly typical to you of a politician when asked to engage with something that isn't directly in his line?
Yeah, he does. I've been following the questions closely and the observations. A couple of comments. I think it's important to build this profile. 101 of account selling is to understand your customer. And if the politician's your customer, you need to understand and have a little profile. And you're going to have to do this collectively, by the way. You can't just do it or somebody else can't do it. And build a profile of who likes what art. Through history, politicians have restored, relaxed, recharged through the arts, various forms. A couple examples. Minister Cormann loves heavy music. I've been in Perth with him at Nina's 99 Luftballons concert. Chris Bowen is a structured bibliophile. He loves deep literature. So there's all these little insights to people of all persuasions. If you look at the arts from the bottom up, there are community performing arts centres, there are local galleries. By proximity, there has to be an interest of politicians, but some of them have deep passions and likings for art. So I'd recommend a little audit, questionnaire, whatever you want to call it, and find out, and start with cabinet and start with shadow cabinet, and then work your way down the parties to the MPs that may not have senior portfolios, and just build a profile. And then you've got, your little account selling plan. You know whom to go and see for which particular type of art-related lobbying or awareness. And don't forget their staff. The staff are a key player, so don't just assume you need to sit down with the MP or the senator. Make sure you engage with the staff as well. I did like the question about, I won't get into the party politics, but all I'll say is just to engage with all sides of Parliament and at all levels.
Absolutely. Now, John has magically appeared, but from somewhere else now. Altogether. This is just the magic of technology. Where have we moved to?
I'm doing really well. I didn't keep an eye on the fuel tank. I ran out of gas and I went. Fantastic. I don't know how that happened because I had it fully charged at the beginning of the day. I just also thought before we went to questions, the member for Parramatta is a concert pianist. Another one. So you've got these little interests dotted all over the place.
Yep.
Yes, and Darren was just saying about extending on that, on the idea of that questionnaire is to do that audit and start up the top with cabinet and shadow cabinet and find out what people's engagement with the arts is. What do they learn? What do they play? Something that J.A. and I've talked about in his office, but also in his electorate office, is about, of course, the artwork that is hanging in a politician's office. That it's been put to me by the former curator at Parliament House. I don't know if you know, John, but Justine has moved on. She's no longer Justine Van Moorick is no longer at Parliament House. She's now at the Art Gallery of South Australia. I don't know if she's been replaced yet, but I will find out to see who the new head of the collection is over at Parliament House. But she pointed out to us at Future Forward at Parliament House a couple of years ago that the visual arts has a bit of a secret advantage above other art forms in that we are in every room, where decisions are being made, where the conversations are happening. And so is that, John, do you, when you go and visit others, do you have that conversation about, well, whose work did you choose? Why did you choose that?
Maybe that should be put on in our front of mind. But inevitably, you do look at their art, and we get comments about our art and why did we have this thing here. I've got a sketch of Malcolm Fraser. Was I a huge fan? Well, I did meet him, and he was very, very nice, and my father was deeply in love with Tammy Fraser, so there was a couple of reasons. And then the real reason was that he used to train with Stan Nichols in Melbourne, and Stan gave him a character reference in that he said he wasn't very talented, but he was a very, very hard worker. And he was the only client he ever had who paid on entrance. So he got very high character marks. And so I thought, well, I quite like him then. And so I've got his sketch, and then I've got some Indigenous art, which I think is great. And Josh, who was previous to Jonathan, he was or is a mad, keen Australian rules fan. So we've got some art.
Oh, I think John's frozen again. No, there he is.
There's a story behind each thing. But so anyway, so we'll go to questions. Tell me what the question is.
Okay, so I'm just saying, John, your line's a bit inconsistent, and hopefully we will get to keep you for a little while longer. Let me ask one of the directly party political questions that have come up. Let's imagine it's election time. You're going to be defending Bennelong again, and there's an artist in your electorate, and they're asking you why should I vote for the coalition specifically on arts policy? How would you respond?
Well, no politician would like to be put in a position like that. Am I coming through clearly? I've got an echo all this.
You are.
But it's a worthwhile question. Everybody's got a particular interest. And so it would be a question.
I'm just going to ask Zoe if she wouldn't mind muting her line.
I'm sorry?
I'm just going to ask Zoe to please mute her line, because the echo that's coming across is from Zoe's end. And then John, continue.
Yeah. You're much better off to meet with the politician prior to that, and people who come to you and argue something during an election do not win your heart. I know I've been cornered on any number of things, especially when the press have been there, or lots of other people. And then people don't like politicians who dodge and weave and try to avoid the question. But cornering them, I don't think is a good idea.
Okay, let's imagine you weren't cornered, and that you've had that question on notice. Why would, just going back to the way the question was phrased, what would your pitch be for your party's record on the arts?
I
question.
would dare say that our record is not as good as Labor has been. My general understanding, which comes from my son, is that no one at WAPA liked the coalition because they didn't think they supported the arts as well as Labor did. And what we would say is that you've got to make money in order to be able to spend money. And so the first thing you've got to do is take care of the economy. And when you're flushed with cash, you can indulge in any manner of things. But there should be a firm position of supporting the arts. I think that firm position is finding ways to make it commercially viable. And in doing that through tourism and linking it to tourism is the way that I think makes it commercially viable.
Let's bring in, I'm hoping that both Zoe and Darren can hear us now. So we've just hit the hour mark. We've got another half hour together. We're going to chat a little bit more, but then towards the end of the session, we're going to tell you some more about what's coming up in coming weeks as well. So John was talking about the viability of the arts, the commercial viability. Zoe and Darren, as we know, there's only a very, very tiny proportion of the arts industry that receives any kind of government funding. It's probably about, it's less than 5%. The arts industry is, it's people are putting in the chat there just the multi-billion-dollar size at $111.7 billion. But of course, arts policy affects everyone. It's about accessibility, it's about regions, it's about cultural diversity, it's about First Nations, it's about, supporting infrastructure, there's all those other aspects. How do we, in those, in a policy sense, how do we distinguish between, I guess, arts policies that seem to just, benefit particular shows or art forms, and policy that is for everyone's benefit? How do we better articulate the public good of the arts, do you think?
Well, I think I go back to that concept that if we are working cooperatively as a team, and you've got a group of artists that are diversified, that have a common goal, and that there is the same benefits that flow from all artistic endeavours, whether it's to watch and be a spectator or a participant, whether it's just for the sake of learning an instrument or a craft or whatever that is, and participating in some small way, and for all the benefits that flow. I often think that in my world of tennis, the downfall, which has been exactly the same in rugby union, has been too much of a concentration of what happens at the Australian Open, and that being a commercial success, than the flow down of getting the racket in the hand of a kid to play tennis, not for any other reason than for the enjoyment of playing tennis. And when you can then link that to the championship, and so that person who has learnt to play guitar or learnt to sing or learnt to play in a local theatre company is far more engaged with the theatre and will support it, and so and bring friends along. So I think that's the pathways that need to be developed, but quite far-reaching to, and there'll probably be new arts that develop that can become part of that family of arts and performing arts. Or variations.
I think that's right. I think that's one of the most exciting things about the constant evolution of art is the ever-changing art forms, and I guess that makes from a policy perspective that's very difficult to keep having that grasp. I'm just going to bring Zoe in, and I'm hoping that that she can both see and hear us, and that we can hear her. Zoe, how are you, and can we hear you, first of all? Okay, that sounds like no. So we can see Zoe, but I don't think she can hear us at the moment. I know the team is busily troubleshooting that.
Press the microphone button. You press the camera button, you've got to press the microphone button.
Yes, I am entrusting one of my colleagues on the chat to support Zoe to find that little button, and I'm just trying to see if I can unmute her from this end, but unfortunately I can't. Darren, it's strange because I can hear her typing. But yes, but she can't hear us.
I learned to laugh then.
Aha, Zoe, can you hear us?
Esther, I can speak and you'll be able to hear me, but I can't hear you at all. I can hear John perfectly, even though he's sideways. I can hear Darren, but I cannot hear Esther, which is a challenge. Maybe John or Darren could translate Esther's questions.
In that case, Darren, why don't you ask Zoe? See, now it's like it's this weird thing and we're just not talking. Can you tell her that I said, I would love to hear from Zoe's perspective as a former policy advisor in this area. How did she communicate the complexity of the things that we've just been talking about, the difference between the ecology, the economics, the viability? How did she work on that in advising her parliamentarians on policy direction?
Okay, so to translate, Zoe, can you hear me? Zoe?
No,
Zoe can't hear me either.
Okay. That is deeply frustrating. So, Darren, let me ask you a similar but very related question, because your work has involved high-level political engagement where you need to communicate complex issues, which from the point of view, perhaps, of the individuals or groups that you're advocating for might seem really straightforward. What is that buffer place between yourself in government engagement and the politician that you're speaking to? How do you really drill down and present an issue as complex as the ones we've just been talking about in ways that will achieve policy change?
So looking at some of the questions as well, you've got to understand what the artist's about, what their day is like. I spent a lot of time in artist studios in China, setting up a range of arts institutions, as John does in his electorate as well, I'm sure. It goes back just down to, having an idea of what you want to get through, what you want to push through, what you want to establish, and just identifying the people to do that with consistently. Now, you've got to develop these relationships over time. You can't just walk in, as sort of John was saying, that you can't just walk in during an election and put somebody on a tightrope and say, you must do this. You must develop these relations over time consistently, and you must do it with all sides of politics. You build real relationships, and then over time you will get your policy priorities at least noted. You may not get them acted. But this is a long haul thing. So you need to start with John's questionnaire or audit, understand whom in politics is interested in which type of art, and then develop a little plan to, depending on what your priorities are, to approach those priorities through those people first.
And we'll be talking a great deal in future weeks about exactly that. We're working towards, once again, Arts Day on the Hill as a national day of advocacy focus, but in building the relationships up until then. That's in the 12th of August, but then also well beyond. I think it's... again, from some of the frustrations in the chat and things that you and I have discussed before, JA, that aspect of relationship building is something that, something that artists and organisations will often say to me is that, but we've been having this conversation for decades, but that isn't the experience of someone who is in an elected position, who has, a million other voices sort of coming at them. In the times when you and I have met, whether it's been in your electorate office or it's been in Canberra, we've had our half hour. And on either end of that, you've got others who are coming in, who are advancing their positions and so on. How many different kinds of groups would you have come and visit you in just a day? And how would you characterise the differences in their approaches in terms of what makes for effective advocacy?
Well, one, I think you've got to know what you want, and it's got to be within the realm of possibility. Is very important, and to be reasonable is always an important aspect in building a relationship. And the days of a politician when you're at your home office, and people often say to me on the street, "Oh, you're not at work." No, Canberra's not sitting there. I'm working in your home office. "Oh, what do you do there?" Okay. Let me tell you, but you do have, we often have constituent days where the whole day is literally booked up, with one half-hour meeting after another, and that I'm no good with time, and so I'll go over and then mess up the next one, and it can be anything from people who have. Recently, I've had a person who I knew something like 40 years ago, who was the head of SPC Fruit Canning Company, and he's worked into all sorts of interesting businesses, very successful businessman. He's well into his 70s. He still works full time. And he's got Wally Parsons have done some engineering work to put a pipe from Tasmania to Victoria and bring water from Tasmania to Victoria to irrigate all of Victoria without the building of one dam. I mean, fantastic. Now, if somebody else would have brought that to me, I would have thought, he's probably a cooker. This guy is no cooker. Had another guy some months ago who brought the idea of wave technology to produce energy. Fantastic. A guy just recently who escaped Iran, had been working in their nuclear program, has come to Australia, and his visa's about to run out, and he can cleanse nuclear waste and shields nuclear waste. I mean, it's just fantastic technology. You get these things; they're really exciting, and that you follow them up and you do it all. I feel like I'm employed by them because I believe in their product, and then I think, well, wait a second, if you two talk together, you can form even a stronger lobby group. And then you get people who have personal problems. You've had a lot of people who have were victims of child sex abuse at school, and they're damaged people, and you listen to them, and you engage with them, and you ride them through that program, and sometimes it's very distressing, and other times there's a very good outcome. So they're very, very broad days. It's a fabulously interesting. That part is a fabulously great part of the job. Some of them are very challenging. You get people coming in, they're climate change experts, and some of the claims they make are wildly inaccurate and overstated. And so you've got to find your way in there. What I would say is you've got to get a methodology down. And I was just thinking which is always a dangerous thing, but when there has been an election and you've got a whole lot of new parliamentarians, a little welcome, hello, this is us, Arts Australia, performing arts and da-da-da-da, welcome to Parliament. We'll be coming to visit you in your office at your earliest convenient time. So get in right at the beginning.
That has, that has long been a technique that I have followed. Very, very important. Jay, I'm just noticing on the chat there is a conversation about the kinds of documents and so on that can be drawn upon when making arguments and when advocating in general. You will find, of course, a wealth of information on the NAVA website, and of course, specifically at the moment, our focus in advocacy is, of course, around what is needed to prevent the collapse of aspects of our industry during this crisis. Yep. But there are also there's past submissions that are noted there and all sorts of things. And I have also mentioned in the past, but will mention again now, that there is a handbook that accompanies the NAVA Advocacy Program, and that is available for NAVA members only on our website. Becoming a NAVA member is very easy. It's as little as $7.50 a month, which again, is the price of a couple of coffees, and there is extraordinary range of benefits, and it's all on our website and all the details there. Now, have we got Zoe? My fingers are crossed. Can you hear me, Zoe?
Zoe?
She's smiling, but I think it's an unrelated smile and not an acknowledgement of understanding. It's so deeply frustrating because as Darren
I can't hear you, but I can speak and I can read you if I go off to the captions at the same time, which is a little bit tricky, but I'm up for it.
Oh my goodness!
So let me just bring up captions. Oh yeah, you can type them there, or I can read it.
I am going to. All right. Let's see how quickly.
Oh, now I'm reading myself. That's very boring.
Okay, no, captions fantastic. So Zoe, as someone who has been a former advisor in arts, in education, in law, having heard, I'm speaking very slowly so that the caption can pick it up clearly, having heard the discussion so far, from your point of view, in having to be a filter between industry requests, some of which are specific, some of which are imaginative, some of which are unrealistic, what have been some of your challenges as an advisor in making sure that your parliamentarian is best placed to deliver what is best for the industry into the future?
Excellent. Okay, I've got you. So I think I have been really lucky in terms of the people for whom I have worked, particularly in and around the art sector, because they've always been very passionate about it. My last minister, Andrew Rudd, at every occasion every time we had a break in negotiations, which wasn't often, and I was thinking, yay, maybe I'll get to have a meal now, would drag me off to a museum somewhere in the world. I worked for Ted Baillieu when he was arts minister, and of course Ted, couldn't be active enough in the arts. I know some people may disagree with that, but at every turn he'd love to drag me into the office and talk for hours about what we might do. And he obviously introduced White Night and changed the pit at the Arts Centre and re-enlivened Collingwood and did regional arts with you, Esther, of course, and small towns and all that kind of stuff. And it was, he was extremely passionate advocate for the arts. I know there are very strong views about George Brandis. I worked for him when he was Arts Minister the first time around in 2006, and he was very successful in getting money primarily for cinema funding at the time, because that was the issue of the day and what we had 10 months to try and sort out at the time. So I've always had the good fortune of working for ministers who are very passionate about arts and culture and who saw it as a really important part of what the federal government does. One thing I would notice, though, is that, they are responsive to parliamentarians across the board, and parliamentarians are responsive across the board to what matters to their constituents. And so, in particular, issues, we know that if you survey Middle Australia, they'll tell you they love arts and culture, they love their kids' school choir, they love the festivals they go to, they love the live music. When you ask them about culture, they think sometimes that you mean things like the Greek festival or the Spanish festival. They sometimes culture to Middle Australia actually means ethnicity, but nevertheless it's often about cultural and artistic expression, and they love it. And so I find parliamentarians are really responsive in relation to the things that matter to their constituents. So that's why so often regional arts does so well, because we know regional arts is really a significant part of the lifeblood of towns and regions. And so, Esther, you have to wave to me when you want me to stop, because I'm looking at you, but I can't read you at the same time. Yeah, okay, good. So they're very responsive to what matters to their constituents. And so, if somebody decided to stop Sculpture by the Sea, Dave Sharma would lose his stuff. I'm putting it in a nice way, right? If somebody was to stop, some of the most well-known regional festivals that we have, people would go mental. I think at some point there was a decision to try and get rid of the Taswegian Symphony Orchestra. And so all, the burghers of Tasmania were furious, and they got their local MPs involved. I think Erica Betts was, the champion of the TSO for a while there. Wow, So
I'm just going to...
Esther, hold on, I'm going to move back to the other page where I can meet you.
Back to the chat. To continue that, I think you're absolutely
And I'm working
right.
on a device that I don't know we're working. Hold on, I've got to find the page where you are.
Okay, brilliant. I will briefly pad while she finds the link to the captions. Okay, excellent. You're right. I've spoken to so many MPs who would absolutely lose their stuff if their favourite local arts event were to cease to exist. Right now, we're in a situation where the viability of the entire industry is at stake. And my frustration is that I feel that parliamentarians either aren't getting it, aren't hearing us, aren't listening, or aren't interested. And so I'm trying to work out which one of those it is, because there's a very real situation where many regional galleries may cease to exist. Performing arts places, the Carriage Works news has been terrible. Is it that is it all sounding so alarmist that people are switching off? What are the ways to really harness that attention at the moment now, where in the middle of a global pandemic, everyone is clamouring for the attention of parliamentarians, but our sector has the potential to support and inspire the entire nation, as JA and Darren was saying about the mental health issues. We have the potential to be such a positive force for good at the moment, as well as supporting the industry. How do we make that case?
Okay, so I think parliamentarians do understand just how important arts and culture is. They would, if asked to rate it as a critical issue for right now, not where you want to see it, simply because the focus has to be on re-enlivening the economy. So where do we put a limited amount of money to create jobs, to re-energise the Australian economy? That's what I think. I know there are lots of conversations going on about support for the arts and how it should be done, and self-evidently that's at the federal and the state level, and it'll also be at the local level. My city of Yarra sent a great thing saying we're going to start plotting on a map all the arts and cultural things happening in our area so you can go, because now you've got many more eyeballs and ears paying attention to the amazing things happening in cultural areas on, digitally at the moment. So I think there are lots of conversations going on, but at the moment you've got to realise, on the one hand, they're saying, look, we're not going to bail out Virgin. We could lose an airline. And if you ask Middle Australia, Joe Punter, what's more important, Virgin or Carriage Works, and organisations like Carriage Works, they're going to say Virgin, right? It's just the way the average person thinks, because the average person doesn't actually realise how many jobs are going on in this space, right? I saw a really, I hate gambling, it's not my thing, but I saw an ad on the TAB the other day that had the farriers, a woman holding some glasses at an event at the races, whatever. And I thought, that actually almost makes me want to bet. Like, I hate betting, but it may almost make me want to think about it. I thought, damn it, there's so much that happens in and around that for the arts as well, right? It's not just the artists, it's everyone else engaged in the provision of the experience of arts and culture. But I don't think that ecosystem is as well known to parliamentarians as artists themselves are, or arts venues themselves are. If I can say one thing that was reprised in the comments many times about building relationships with MPs, the average MP, I think, sticks around between 12 to 15 years, right? So they're there for a really long time. Esther, as I've done with you, you've invited me to things before, and I've said, I've been involved in arts policy one way or the other for 20 years, and I constantly get introduced to the same people like it's the first time I've met them. And I'm thinking, yeah, I met you in 2003, 2007, 2010, 2012, 2015, and now in 2017. But that's okay. Don't worry. I don't mind, whatever. And then the other thing is I often go to things. I'm like, well, I don't go to anywhere near as much as I'd like to. But when I do, and it's tea time or whatever, drinks, no one comes up and badgers me. I'm going, I'm here to be badgered. I'm here to be asked questions. I'm here to work for you. Please tell me what you need, want done, what you hate, what you love, what you think we should be thinking about differently. Don't think I'm here to have a good time. I'm not. I mean, I'm having a good time. Thank you for the ticket, but please make me work. And that was when I was an advisor to either the Premier or the Arts Minister or whoever else. Just make them work. That's what they're there for. Tell them what you're passionate about, what you need them to know. But I like that you'd find out about the arts experience of MPs, but I think the arts engagement of their local area is almost more important. So their local festival, their local book club, their local school, their local choir, the festivals they're engaged in, I actually think that's the way to get to them. And usually there are pretty detailed briefings given to parliamentarians about what kind of cultural things or what funded cultural things are happening in their seats. You guys want your stuff in there. You know, you've got 3 visual artists doing amazing work in your seat. Here's what their names are, and here's what, you know, those informations can be provided to MPs and should be. And then when you go in there, to some extent your work's done. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is what we do here, and it's really important. You know, the local aged care folk are involved, the schools are involved, the mental health groups are involved, whatever, you know. They are motivated by what matters to their constituents. It's not rocket science. Yeah.
Thank you, Zoe, for putting that so
back to
clearly.
reading now.
I have just put in the chat there the link to a really fantastic thing that the Australia Council have put together some time ago, which is the Electorate Profiles. This is, you know, for many, many years, the Australia Council and every funding agency collects data on what they grant and so on by electorate, so that any politician can find out, but also so any taxpayer can see that there hasn't been any favouritism, you know, towards particular electorates. It occurred to the Australia Council just a few years ago, this wonderful idea, wait a minute, if we're collecting this data, we could make it publicly available, and then that can be a wonderful tool for everyone to say, right, I've got a meeting with JA next week, he's the member for Bennelong, I'm going to go to the electoral profile page, I'm going to click on the electorate of Bennelong, and then, hello, I've got all these wonderful statistics on ticket buying, on cinemas, on galleries, on people's attitudes to arts and culture, on participation, and the Australia Council keeps adding to that, which is just super fantastic. So I recommend that to everyone. We're now just in our last 10 minutes, so I'm going to make a few wrapping up and thank you kind of statements. I'm just going to talk very briefly about the next few weeks, and then I will bring in Darren and JA and Zoe for just the last part of our chat. The NAVA Advocacy Program is very much about everything we've just been talking about, including all the frustrations that we've just been expressing on the chat. Yes, relationship building is really time consuming. Yes, it can be frustrating when you're speaking to someone, a parliamentarian, and they're not from the party that you feel the most aligned to. Yes, it can be frustrating when we don't know what's behind, you know, certain kinds of decision making, or when, you know, we've caught a politician on a busy day and they've had all the people that JA was just explaining have also spoken to them on that day. And yes, as individuals, certainly as individual artists, no one has the time to put in the work that it would take to build a national cultural policy and pitch that, or to build relationships with multiple MPs across the country. But if all of us do a little bit, then the combined networks, the passion, the awesomeness of that is amazing. There are so many of us. There are 100 of us here at the moment. There are, I think, around 700 people who are registered for this program in general. There are many, many thousands and thousands of NAVA members. And of course, there are 50,000 practicing professional artists in Australia and 600,000 arts workers and millions of arts lovers. So it can be hard to know what to do. This program is all about, we've just spent a few weeks talking about advocacy in general. We're then going to spend 4 weeks looking at policy development in particular, the long term of it. We're going to hear from John Daly, the CEO of the Grattan Institute, next week, which is quite a coup. I'm just so thrilled that he said yes. I'm just going to turn my light on because it's getting a bit dark. and that's called Policy Literacy, Where Do the Arts Sit? Now, John Daly, as well as being the outgoing CEO of one of Australia's leading think tanks, he's also either the chair or is still involved in, I forget his specific role, but he has been involved and has certainly been the past chair of one of the Australia Council's research committees. He's on arts boards. He's on, he's a very, very strong engagement with the arts, which is fantastic. The next week, we're going to have Jackie Bailey, who's a global cultural policy research and evaluation specialist looking at global comparisons, who's doing this well in other countries. The week after that, the 3rd of June, our topic is Achieving Policy Goals from Within an Invisible Portfolio. And our guest that week is Mike Murdoch AO, who is the former secretary of the former Department of Communications and the Arts. And then at the end of that week, another Q&A with a politician on the 10th of June, and that will be Maria van Vakino, who is one of JA's co-chairs of the Parliamentary Friendship Group for Contemporary Arts and Culture. Our program goes for months and months, and it culminates in Arts Day on the Hill, where we're going to put everything that we've done, we're going to apply that in some really, really impactful ways, and there's more of that as we head towards that time. Our program is broken up into chunks of 4 weeks. So we've just done 4 weeks on understanding, on advocating the arts. Our next 4 weeks, understanding policy development. The 4 weeks after that are going to be about understanding the media engagement, being a media spokesperson as an artist, a newsroom analysis, and so on. The next 4 weeks are going to be about understanding the politics, political engagements, insights from the inside, how to plan a meeting with a politician, and then heading into Arts Day on the Hill, so that we can all do as little or as much as we would like, but that importantly, we all remain as passionately engaged as we feel comfortable to. Now, we've got just a few minutes left, and a few people are having to go. Has anyone got a final burning question for Darren or for JA or for Zoe? I'm going to say to JA to give Jonathan a big hug and a thank you for me, because he's clearly had to.
I've been suspicious of you two for a while, by the way.
Oh, darling. He's been very wonderful in imposing for you at the other meeting. And he has also had some fantastic ideas on surveys that we should be doing of fellow parliamentarians. A few people are posting different submissions that are open at the moment, which is really great. Someone mentioned earlier that although the federal government has frozen or suspended local content, Australian content requirements for Australian drama, documentary and kids programming, there is also a discussion paper out on that at the moment, and it would be fantastic if people could contribute. There's lots of ideas about forming national bodies, and a couple of us who are here were on a chat about that very much today, and then some comments there about the intrinsic value of the arts, the contribution that the arts makes to healthy, engaged, intelligent communities, and how important it is for our government to recognise that. Darren, it has been really, really great to get to meet you, and Darren has also kindly said that he's happy to have one-on-one chats, which is very, very kind of you.
Yeah,
I personally will be taking you up on that. So much I want to ask you now that we've gotten to know each other. Zoe, thank you again, and thank you for persevering with the technical challenges. It has been, yes, very much the hiccups this week, but yeah, thank you so much. And JA, huge thanks. Final words of advice from you for artists who are engaging with parliamentarians for the first time.
Well, thank you all. Zoe, I'd love to have you on the team. You're fantastic. And so are you, Esther and Darren. Thank you. I think there's a couple of issues that are probably timely that we should be pursuing. One is the aspect of the arts being a tool to prevent and treat mental health, to stimulate regions in the recovery. The loss of jobs, everybody's very sensitive about that. So to get the support for those who have lost their jobs and to use that support to help rebuild would be a good thing. That the attachment to Taste Trails, which was the group that were pushing the regional tourism, I think is very important. So I'll make sure that I get their details to you, and we'll get you together, working together, because that would be a very good thing. By the way, Zoe, under Andrew Robb, who I was a great fan of, we had agreed to get a member of the George Brandis's as Minister for Arts to come, someone from the Minister of Sport, who was Susan Lee at the time, to come, and I was representing tourism, so we would be able to work together. And yet when someone from George Brandis's turned up for the meeting, he was the Attorney General. He didn't even know that he was the Minister for the Arts, so there was a problem. And the same from the Health Minister, didn't know that particularly this was about sport, but it was about getting the three groups to work together, because in Parliament, these ministers do not work together. And on the night that we finally got together was the night that Tony Abbott got rolled, and so it was still born. But I still work towards that area. I think we've got to get those three ministries pulling together, and in this time of looking at what to do in the rebuilding of our economy, this is a very, very important thing, because if something dies, it's very hard to bring it back to life. You've got to keep it alive and put some money in this way. And in this dramatic time, this has been overlooked, this area. And I think it's important that we raise it now. So I'll work at that end. I will contact Louise Heron, and I think the questionnaire to all politicians is a good thing. And there was, and the working with regional tourism, we can get John Barilaro, now that he's staying where he is, to assist in that area, and we'll find out a few others. But we do have some very engaged people in Parliament in the arts. The more I thought about it, the more I came up with more names. So
Good.
I will work at that area, because we do have quite a bit of downtime at the moment to actually get creative and get these groups together. So I'll make that a mission tomorrow, and if we can talk, Esther, tomorrow, we'll push that along, okay?
It's a plan, JA. This is good. This is good. Now, thank you so much to everyone who has attended this evening. Darren, Zoe, thank you so much. And JA, thank you again. This is part of ongoing conversations for us, but also just a really important chance to all have this conversation together. So thank you very, very much. And to everyone, join us again same time next week, where we'll be joined by John Daly, the CEO of the Grattan Institute. Thank you, everyone, and good evening.
Good evening and good night. Good night, Zoe. Bye.
Bye.
Darren, bye-bye.